intro video. Oh, it's not gonna play it. Never mind.
Hi guys.
Okay.
Hello, we're live.
Hello.
Sorry, Ron.
That's all right.
I thought it was gonna like abruptly interrupt you and
yeah.
Get the music going. Yeah.
Oh, I must have turned it off when we recorded last week, and I guess that's why I didn't do it again.
Oh well.
Sorry guys, no countdown for you.
To interrupt you.
Turn that back on. There we go. Anyway, I was interviews gone bad. I had requested to interview an actor who lived in Brooklyn, and he graciously invited me to his local pub. And he's like, "Yeah, come hang out with me. We can talk, whatever." And so I went, and I brought my trusty tape recorder. And this is pre-digital days and all this other stuff, and sat down and hung out for like 3 hours and got amazing stories. Got home, and the tape goes, "Hey, so I'm here with," and just was dead because I never checked to make sure it was still turning. And I was so embarrassed. I never had the guts to I didn't want to be like, "I didn't get any of it. Can we do it again?" And I never talked to him again. So
you didn't even follow up like, "Oh, and here's what I did with it." You're just like, "Nope. It's a thing that happened, and I've moved on."
Yep.
We've all had those where you're "There's no coming back from this. Just call it."
Yep.
Yeah, totally, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just the way it goes. You work in media long enough, that's gonna happen to you.
Yep.
And when it does, it changes how you approach it the next time. So
you learn from it,
how we
right?
learn.
Yeah. So
exactly. Well, cool. Well, okay. I feel like every once in a while I have to re-ask you this, and I'm sure I'm not alone. Nirave?
It's Nirave, yeah.
Okay. All right. Phew, got it right. Nirave, happy to have you here. It was great running into you and hanging out with you at Mobile World Congress. And yeah, we have a lot to talk about tonight. Some of it MWC, whatever we call it. Mobile World Congress, NWC. Okay, that's what it is. Related. And some of it not. So cool.
No, I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. I know you're doing a lot of different things. How do you want to be introduced as far as what you're like? Do you have a main thing or do you do all things?
I think doer of all things. Even I don't know. If someone asks me what do you do, and I'm like, well, I put words on whatever site will accept it and put videos out when I can do it and drink a lot of Prosecco.
Okay. No,
somewhere in that range you find me.
That's a winning combination to me. I wish I had a Prosecco right now.
That would be nice.
You know what? I really wish I'd just popped a bottle, but I was like, I'm in the UK. It's midnight.
Oh. Well, that's when the party starts. Mm-hmm. Or at least it did when I was in my 20s.
Well, we appreciate you spending a late night with us, so we thank you for that. Yeah.
Well, I said to Jason, my first ever Android Authority podcast, I've got to tell you, even though it's live, I'll tell you, it was at 4:30 in the morning UK time.
Oh,
wow.
On my first day. And it took me 90 minutes to tell Josh Vergara that he had my name wrong for the last 5 years. I think I told Jason that, and I think that's why he was like, let me just clarify.
Well, I clarified your first name. I didn't clarify your last name. I feel like I should do that too.
Gondhia.
Gondhia. Okay, so that's kind of as I would have assumed. Okay, cool. Nirave Gondhia, doer of all things, House of Tech. That works for me. Apologies to listeners and viewers in advance. I have this lingering cough, you see, and it totally comes out of nowhere. I've got a little mute button on the side of this mic that when I tap it, you can't hear me anymore. So I'm going to do my very best to mute. I'm
struggling with a nearly lost voice from a decadent weekend. So
hardcore.
I'm like Ron, except it's still recovering from Barcelona.
Yeah,
I can imagine.
Feeling that too.
That was the worst.
And we have a lot.
Just the craziest show.
Yeah. And this is we got a ton of stuff to get through. So do we want to get into it?
A ton of stuff. Yeah. We got a lot of people.
Yep.
We got 90 minutes. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to do our damnedest to make it happen. So I'm going to, and then I guess I'm doing the intro. Do you want to do the top of the show switching?
Sure. Yep. I can do that. Yep.
Mind doing that?
All right. So I'm just going to remove everyone. So we will add you all back when we get started. And Jason, you can still hear me, correct?
Yep. I got you.
All right. Man. I'm covering you up, sir. All righty. Let's do it.
Oh, Hello, and welcome to Android Faithful, a weekly show where we take a look at the world of Android, the latest news, hardwares, apps for the world of Android. I'm Jason Howell.
And I am Ron Richards.
And I'm Huyen and
And I'm Mishaal Rahman.
Oh, yeah,
Hey.
with the big plushie.
We're
the
all
bot.
we're all back together. You guys survived Mobile World Congress, and you are back.
Still trying to survive, actually, if I'm gonna be honest.
But you brought
Still
something with
recovering.
you for Mobile World Congress, didn't you, Jason and Mishaal?
Yeah. Well,
Oh yeah,
man.
we brought a lot of stuff back. I mean, I didn't bring as many as
You talking
Jason
about my
did
golf?
because you went.
I was-
You held it up. I was like, oh shoot, I wanted to show off my pin collection, but
I was
Jason,
thinking.
I'm sure yours blows mine out of the water.
I was thinking more about a person.
Yes, indeed. Ran
Oh, yeah.
into Nirave Gondhia at Mobile World Congress, and it's great to have you here, Nirave. It's been, I feel like the last couple of times we've run into each other, we're like, oh, we got to make that happen. And then this last time we were there, we were at an event, and I was like, all right, pull out your calendar. We're just dropping it in the rundown right now. So it's great to have you.
I'm honestly glad we did because it would have been another 6 months.
Yeah.
Mostly on
Well,
my side. I'd be
honestly,
like, oh, next time I see Jason,
yes.
I really should get on the Android Faithful podcast at some point.
I'd like to say that it wouldn't be that long, but let's be real. Sometimes life is just weird like that. Doer of all things is what I have written down here. House of Tech. You write, you podcast, you do all things. So
Yeah, so I mostly write over at Digital Trends, but then you find my my video content, if you will, social content, my handles, and hot.tech spelt out is the House of Tech on all platforms.
excellent. And it's very late where you are, so thank you for sacrificing your sleep for the world of Android. Yeah, on our time schedule, anyways. You can pay me back.
I'm so
down the
excited for
line.
this. It's great.
And I'll wake up early for you someday. Okay, so why don't we get right into the news? Before we do, can I do a quick unboxing for you?
Sure.
A
yeah.
surprise
Let's do it.
unboxing. This was not planned, but then as I was coming up here, I was like, I think I need to just do this because I haven't even opened. It's not an unboxing; it's an unbagging. Check this out. Do you know what this is? Do you know what you're gonna find in this bag right here? Audio listeners are like, I don't even know what you're
Come
talking
on.
about.
It's a canvas drawstring bag, y'all.
It's a canvas drawstring bag.
This is like out of 7. What's in the bag? Whoa!
Oh man,
Oh,
like I said,
holy
your
monkey.
collection blows mine out of the water.
Oh my gosh! So Jason
Whoa.
just dumped a canvas bag full of Android enamel pins.
Yes.
And we are all the jealousy factor in this podcast.
Is
Just went
it-
up by like.
is
I
this the
literally
part-
have
Oh my
not seen them until
gosh.
now. I haven't opened the bag.
Is this the part where you're going to offer to mail
You
them
get a
to
pin.
mail
You
them
get
to
a
us, as well as maybe we'll do a giveaway on Patreon?
But I have the whole set, Ron. I can't get rid of the whole set.
Is
I
it
can't
a
get rid
whole
of-
set? Are
Jason,
there
you've got the whole set.
are there no redundancies there? Are they all different?
No, they're all different.
Oh my gosh,
Um,
that's amazing.
I
Jason,
sat
did,
down.
did you actually get every single one? Because there's apparently like a prize you could have won or something.
Well, no, I okay. I didn't do this. Like, okay, so for people who were there at Mobile World Congress, those of you who were there would know that there was like a little like a booklet that I think Google was giving out that
Mhm.
basically said if you go to all these different manufacturers' booths and you talk to the right people, they'll each give you a special pin, and they all had different ones. And so it was kind of like on day one, you had the whitish pins, right? Or was it day one the color?
That was day 2, the
pins?
whitish pins. I know
Okay.
because I don't have like any of them because I had to leave after day 1.
Oh, right, you did. Dang. Yeah, and I'm not seeing, well, I'm seeing some of the whitish pins in here. Anyways, day one you'd get one set, day two you'd get the other. And yeah, I mean, I guess this is a little bit of a humble brag because I did get to sit down with Samir Samat, who's head of Android, for an interview. I have an article coming soon on ZDNet, but I'm going to run the full interview on tomorrow's episode of AI Inside podcast. And at the end of it, I was handed the bag. And so it was
What?
kinda
Wow.
like,
Oh,
"What?"
nice.
And they were just like, yeah, there's all the pins. You don't have to collect them. So anyways, I totally forgot about it until I came up here to do the podcast and sat down. I was like, oh, the bag. I haven't even opened the bag. So
So
there you
It's
go.
too
It's like
funny.
Android goodness.
about
Cool.
8 years ago, we did one where Google was like, we were like, do you know what? It'd be really fun to collect all the pins. And I forget who did it. One of us reached out to PR and they were like, oh, we'd love to give you all the pins for a giveaway.
There you go. Next
you
year,
got
now we know about the pins. We got to get them to spread the wealth and share them with the audience, Jason.
And the cool thing is, it's not just pins; it's also a sticker. It's like a themed sticker along with
That's
the pin.
so cool.
Mhm.
Dang, my laptop could be covered.
Yeah.
Could be
Yeah.
dripping in Android.
That's very.
I've
cool.
always been surprised they don't do this at I/O.
Yeah, kind of seems
Like,
like
it makes so much more logical sense to do pins at every I/O stand than it does during MWC.
Yeah.
Well, maybe pre-pandemic, the IO pre-pandemic, where they actually had like a whole bunch of different areas you could go to. Nowadays, it's kind of just the keynote section.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Well, we've got Mobile World Congress to talk about. And I know that you and Win talked about MWC last week.
We talked about some of the MWC news that came out at the point of last week, but really,
Right.
I think the thing that we're most excited about is hearing from all three of yours experience of being boots on the ground, how much hamon you ate, what phones you saw. Like that's the stuff we really want to know about tonight.
Yeah.
So
Cool. We will get to that in hardware. As everyone knows, though, we don't get to hardware until we talk about the news. And there is not one news block, but there is two news block. We do not have any emails today. We are full of stories to talk about. So why don't we dive right in, Ron, with the top news?
Yeah. So I don't know if it was timed with. It was probably timed with MWC on purpose, or just with all the world that's going on. But last week, actually, last Wednesday, the day after our show, Google back to announcing things that not on a Tuesday, unfortunately. Google made a pretty big announcement, sharing the kind of next generation of search. This is bigger than Android, I would say. This is just more about how you interact with Google and specifically Gemini, but it does apply to all of us here at the Android Faithful. And the main thing was that this is a massive step forward in terms of integrating AI into the search results experience. It's basically transforming search from like lists of links into basically like an intelligent research assistant. They're leveraging Gemini 2.0, but this isn't just a matter of just like, oh, Gemini's in search now. What it's doing is it's using what they call a query fan out that searches multiple subtopics simultaneously when you ask something, when you give it a question. It does that. And then it's following the conversational flow, as in terms of a chatbot, but it allows you to have follow-up questions and has that capability to manage those follow-ups. And what it's doing is it's synthesizing the information from the knowledge graph, databases, product information, whatever data it can access, and pulling them all together in this new kind of search, conversational experience. So it's gonna be available to Google One AI Premium subscribers via Labs. So if you're a Google One AI Premium subscriber, you can get access to it. And they're also looking, to expand the accessibility, extending it to teenagers, removing sign-in requirements, things like that to make it more accessible. And as they lay out the roadmap in this announcement, they say they want to have more visual responses, better formatting, enhanced web content. And really, this is a glimpse of what the future of search from Google will be with Gemini 2.0 under the hood and completely kind of reimagined. This did drop last Wednesday. So you guys were back from Barcelona by that point, or were you still in Barcelona?
I was flying back.
I was
flying
back in
back,
Barcelona.
Yeah,
So-
Mishaal, you were back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Jason,
Mishaal?
I gotta ask you. This sounds an awful lot like what Perplexity's been doing for a while,
Yes.
and I know you've been a big user of Perplexity. So I wanted to ask, what is your take on this?
Well, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. You're right. This is what Perplexity has kind of long kind of based its business on, is we're search but better, we're kind of like an integrated research type of search. And so it makes sense for Google to do this. I don't know that it makes sense for Google to go down the road and maybe they find themselves there eventually where they say this is the new search, our new search now with this AI tool, because I think they're a little bit different. Like sometimes you just want a straight search and sometimes you want like a research tool to go through multiple points and pull back results and organize and synthesize and all that kind of stuff. And that's what this does. Incredibly useful, though, I will say. My experience with Perplexity, the more I use it, the more I find use for it. And it's just, it's really great. So I'm looking forward to using this just to kind of see how it stacks up against Perplexity from that regard, for sure. So yeah.
Yeah, the Perplexity comparison, Mishaal, that was the first thing I was like, oh, they like now we see who they're worried about, right?
Yeah. I mean, they're all, you know, the AI kind of industry right now, they're all moving in the same directions. It's kind of like smartphones to that degree. You know, it's like everybody that has an LLM system, they're all doing agents over here. They're all doing research search products over here. It's, you know, they feel like they need to be in all places, and Google definitely needs to be there too.
Yep.
So I
The
have a
thing
question
is,
for you.
if they're
Yeah, go ahead, Niraj.
Sorry.
I was going to ask
If
you a
they're-
question, but go ahead.
I mean, my thought process is like, if they're in the process, like if they're moving towards this model, which I love Perplexity Search, it fits the way we are now. It's kind of a twofold problem in my perspective, because like you said, sometimes you just want a straight search.
Yep.
Yes.
We hate AI overviews, because they kill publisher businesses, and we're all directly affected by that. I don't know. I can't see this magically changing that situation for the better. But also, between the sponsored stuff, between the AI, between everything else, it's already a cluster. Why? This might make it really easy for your average search, but on an average basis, it's going to become harder to find the information you want, because we're people who know how to conduct a Google search.
Yep.
Mm.
Well,
And
I also wanted to ask.
Go, Mishaal.
Go ahead. I just wanted to ask Nirav. You've been on the other end. You've been on the publishing side of things. I want to ask your opinion. How do you think this kind of feature is going to affect, you know, publishers and the people that we write for, the websites we write for, the content that we produce?
I think okay. During I'll give you the best example I can. During the pandemic, or first, in the tech industry, there was a lot of great years. Then, and I'll use Huawei. Huawei is an example of what political pressure can do to a company. We're not going to go into that. But then the knock-on effect, because they were spending a lot of money with a lot of publishers. Others stepped up. Then you then look at the way the pandemic affected all publishers, and all the business models were turned upside. Then the helpful content update. But after all of that, I think this shift in search over the last year is not something we can ever recover from. There will be publishers who find out, you know, this new search model. Public writer brain is like, okay, here we go. This is going to be another hit that I need to weather for the business. Publisher brain is like, ooh, there's new top stories. There's new forms of discover. There's all of these new places that are, in theory, if you're smart enough, able to give you an opportunity to kind of go, like, almost level the playing field. I think the biggest issue is how Google executes. And with love, I say that there is absolutely, I have zero faith in their ability to execute in a way that doesn't satisfy that. Yes, it makes them money. Sorry, my camera's deciding to go in and out a little bit.
It's dramatic. It looks good.
I think it's not just about how they execute for themselves. That they're going to make money and make bucket loads of money. Although I think shifts of time and other brands are starting to get awareness, especially with how bad it's been. Yeah. But I'd be worried about the underlying sources. That there, we're kind of at their whim.
And that goes back to your other comment earlier, which is like, even in the launch announcement, we had another case of a Google announcement with examples that aren't really realistic. They try to create these scenarios of like, what is the example in our article on AndroidFaithful.com is like, what is a good time to do a photo shoot in Boston Garden or whatever? Like, no one really does that, right? And Nirav, to your point, I've been doing a lot of work in my day job for doing research on certain things, stuff like that. I've been using Jason Perplexity, and I've been using ChatGPT and using Gemini to try to help me gather sources and find some stuff. And I'm just finding inconsistencies in sources all the time. Like I was investigating basically how like Yelp and OpenTable verify businesses. And I got 3 different answers from all 3 of the different chatbots. They find one snippet of a paragraph that says what you typed in and just give you that as, and like, there's the answer. And I'll be like, no, actually that's wrong. And like, oh, you're right. Here's the right answer. And it's like maddening, and just give me the old Google search. I mean, it might be too, old man yelling at a cloud, but like, it seems like they're stumbling over themselves to be conversational, that they're not being precise and accurate. Right.
Yeah.
So
do you remember Chrome, like when Chrome flags were a big thing?
Yeah.
Can't you just give us a flag that we can enable that just allows us to use a chronological field? Like, the best thing that Google has done, I got to say this, is not tinker with Gmail too much.
Yep.
Gmail is still just a list of emails. Can you imagine if it moved into, here's the top emails and here's a whole bunch of swipey cards underneath, and now let's make it 50 times harder.
What cracks me up about that is that Gemini is in Gmail, and I as a joke, I hit the summarize this email button because the summaries are just so, like, I'll just read the email, Jesus. But today I was writing an email, and Gemini served up 3 boxes above the formatting menu with Gemini suggested responses, and 2 of them were just like batshit crazy, right? But the third one was like, oh, actually, that's exactly what I wanted to say. So I clicked it, and I just edited a couple of words and sent that. And so mileage may vary, but we got a lot more to talk about. But this is definitely, I'm excited to get my hands on it. We know that this is getting ahead of Google I/O. Probably going to have a ton of this at Google I/O in a couple months. And
for sure.
Yeah. So
more of that to come. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have a few One UI 7 beta updates for you. Some good things, actually a majority good things, and a few more date updates. So one of arguably the most controversial changes, or at least mostly debated changes in One UI 7, was the split of the notification shade into 2 separate shades, one strictly for notifications and one for quick settings. And one of the, I guess, depending on your mileage, one of the casualties or changes at the very best of this was the moving of the media players from the notification shade, where it was once unified, to the quick settings. Depending on how you use your phone, that may be really convenient, and users did complain, but to Samsung's credit, they did listen to feedback. And so in the One UI 7 beta for at least the Z Flip 6, they've made a modification to add the media player back to the notification panel. However, you do have to enable it yourself. It's off by default. But if you go to the now bar settings under live notifications, if you're on the One UI 7 beta, you should be able to see it. Now, note, this is not moving the player from quick settings if you really liked it or you were just curious. They're going to coexist. So the media player in the quick settings is permanent. So now there's 2 places you can control your media, and we'll see if One UI 7 does anything to unify that, or that's how it's going to be. Now, 2 other things that are more for foldable folks like myself are Samsung kind of bringing in 2 features that other foldables like the Pixel Fold have had. The first is the swipe to continue option. This was most recently added to Pixel Folds, but folks like Oppo, Honor, and other foldables have had it for a while. So this is an option that lives under the display menu, and it has to do with, say, when you have your foldable open to the inner screen, you're using an app, and you close your foldable, what happens on that front cover? Well, as it stands now on Pixel and the other manufacturers I mentioned, if you go to display, there's a sub-menu that gives you 3 options. One is always, which means that whenever you are using an app, you close your inner screen, it'll immediately launch on the outer display. The second option, which is now available on Samsung, is swipe to continue. So what happens is you're using an app on your inner screen, you fold it closed, you're going to get a few seconds to swipe up from the bottom before that outer display locks, so that you can swipe up to just go ahead and continue using it. So it adds a little bit of a gate in case you sometimes want your screen to lock, sometimes you do or you don't. And then, of course, the third option is just to always lock. So that is finally in One UI 7 as well in the coming beta. And finally, there is that little taskbar that a lot of foldables have. So it's if you have your Samsung Galaxy Z Fold or whatever, or you have your Pixel Fold, usually you get this little nice taskbar that has like a number of docked icons, maybe some recent apps, and maybe the app icon. So on One UI 7, or One UI in general, it's been static for a bit. It just lives under there, and you either have it or you don't have it. Now with the new update, you'll have not just the ability to auto hide it after a certain amount of time, you're going to have a little extra half swipe that you can do at the bottom of the screen to bring it up and to bring it back down again. So there you go, some improvements. I did try it earlier. I actually haven't used that gesture too much, and I kind of wonder how how it works with circle to search for most folks because, man, our gesture space getting a little crowded, but you got it. All right. And then real quick, because I know we got a lot to do, we gave you a laundry list of like dates and phones and series that we're getting the One UI 7 beta at different times. Just to update that, folks using Galaxy Z Fold 6, Z Fold Flip 6 in India, Korea, UK, US, you are getting the beta on March 6th, so you should already have it, which is why we got some of these wonderful features being reported in. Now, if you're on the Galaxy S23 series, Tab S10 series, and A55, sometime later this March, you're going to get that beta. And of course, the official update will be rolling out next month. So if you're not a beta person, you don't got to wait too long for all that fun stuff. And there you go.
I like the swipey up thing on the front, like when you close it, and then that kind of feels like you're doing a magic trick. It's like show it here.
The card comes from your sleeve and
goes
out. Here's your app again.
It's very
My
silent.
Samsung has always been set to automatically do it, but as soon as I started using Find M5, and I was like, oh, I like this. This is just that little step gives you that.
Yeah.
No, I don't want to reveal whatever I was just looking at to whoever's over my shoulder, etc.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess
Sounds
it
like
does
the auto
introduce a
hiding
little bit of
taskbar.
insecurity, right? But I mean, it's such a short period of time. But security, like people who are really focused on security will be like, yeah, but that's enough for someone to swoop in and get into your phone. Anyways, what you got, Mishaal?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of features that are coming in the upcoming Android 16 and beyond releases. Google has announced that they are going to be bringing lock screen widgets to mobile devices beyond just tablets. So for a little context, over a decade ago, Android used to let you put widgets on your phone's lock screen, but they killed that capability in Android 5.0 Lollipop. With the previous
everything old is new, right?
Oh, I know, right?
It's all coming full circle. With the previous Pixel drop in December, they reintroduced lock screen widget support, but only for tablets like the Pixel tablet. Fast forward to last week, and Google announced in a blog post that it will bring back this feature to mobile devices in an upcoming update. Specifically, they said it will be rolling out to AOSP, or Android's open source code version, with the first quarter release of Android 16. In other words, Android 16 QPR1, which is scheduled to drop in September. Google didn't share any details about how this feature will work on mobile, but as you can see in the video, I managed to activate the feature to take it for a quick spin. So in my early hands-on, I noticed that lock screen widgets work a bit differently on phones than they do on tablets. Obviously, there's different screen sizes involved. So instead of a 2x3 grid like you have on tablets, only 2 widgets will be shown at a time in a single column, because that's how much can fit at a time on your phone screen. More importantly, this widget space is accessed differently than it is on tablets. Instead of swiping right or swiping inward from the right edge on the lock screen, instead you activated it by triggering the screensaver first. So in other words, you put your phone on a charger or you dock it. And now, in a previous episode, I talked about how Google's working on a new method to trigger the screensaver that involves putting your phone upright. So at the very least, it'll be easier to activate this feature, once it does roll out. But hopefully Google will allow you to access your widgets without you having to actually enable the screensaver. So yeah, and you can see in this video that's embedded in the Android Authority article how the lock screen widgets feature works. It's pretty neat. I do hope it rolls out, as Google mentioned, in the QPR1 release in September. I imagine
really
a
is
pilot
a
people will
retro.
be using it.
It's
It
such
really
a
is
retro.
kind of
And
like
this
a
actually
throwback.
reminds me, I need to figure out how to turn it
Totally.
off on my Pixel tablet, because I'm really tired of when I get close to the tablet on the dock, it changes to all the widgets when I just want it to be the photos on the screensaver. Like I don't care what stock prices are, but I haven't touched it at all, so I need to customize.
Speaking
it.
of retro, did any of y'all
Doesn't
recognize that live wallpaper that's in the video?
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yep. That is the glow field, the bubble live wallpaper from a long time ago.
Very funny.
Do you know what though? I think there's a lot of people won't find a use for widgets, but I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay. One of the reasons I use an Apple Watch and an iPhone is because my glucose monitor has a widget on that works on the locks on the home screen. There isn't one for Android. But can you imagine if now that widget is super useful but it's small. It gives me just a snippet of information. For someone who might be on insulin, I'm not, thank God. Like it could be amazing if you have a lock screen widget. So all you got to do is glance at your phone at any point just to get an understanding of where your sugars are, where your health is at. anything else that that's actually kind of crucial.
I mean, your example is a lot more crucial, a lot more critical than my example. But for me, the Pocket Casts widget on the settings pane. I use often when I'm running to skip ads in a podcast, right? And if I could avoid having to unlock the phone, swipe down, get to that widget, or unlock the phone, swipe over, if that could be a lock screen widget, then that would make my life a lot easier also, and honestly safer. So yeah.
I would personally pin the Google Keep shopping list to the lock screen, because I have to unlock that lock. Like, I do have the widget, the single note widget on my smartwatch. But the problem with that is it doesn't sync that often. Like, I have to manually open it.
That's no good.
And it's very slow. And you can't see that many items. I would definitely pull out my phone more often for that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what widget I'd put on my lock screen to figure that out.
Well, you have a couple of months to figure that
Yeah,
out, because
got
this
some
feature's
time.
not ready yet.
Do some homework.
Speaking of other features that aren't ready yet, Google is also working on new PC-like external display tools for Android. So if you have a phone in the Pixel 8 or Pixel 9 family, you may be aware that Google finally let you, they added display output capabilities, meaning when you plug your phone into an external monitor, you can mirror the screen. But that's pretty much all you can do right now. You can enable some developer options to show a bare bones desktop interface on the external monitor, but it's not really usable. And it's not anything like what Windows or Chrome OS do in terms of extending the display. Google is now working on new features that kind of bring Android closer to desktop operating systems. For starters, they're working on a feature that lets you seamlessly move a mouse pointer between your mobile device and the external monitor, which is a staple of desktop operating systems. The second thing they're doing is they're adding support for rearranging the external displays so that you can tell Android where the external display is located physically in relation to your mobile device. Third, they're adding a toggle that lets you switch between mirroring and extending the display, which is obviously a very common feature on desktop platforms. And fourth, they're adding a new settings that lets you adjust the display size and text size of the external display independently of your mobile device. Now, these features aren't available yet in the latest Android 16 Beta 2.1 release, and I don't know when they will be released, but as you can see in this video that Ron is showing on Android Authority, I did manage to enable them to show them off on video. So if you want to see what they're like, go take a look at that.
Yeah. This is a solid feature for the person who wants to do this. I don't know.
I mean, this is the step. This is a very crucial step for desktop mode.
Step towards DeX, right?
Yeah.
But everyone's like, at least half of manufacturers at this point have built their own. So what we're going to end up with is the official Google one, and like 15 different versions that kind of work on top, and it will be nearby share all over again. Sorry, which was quick share, which was whatever else was named before it.
Yeah.
We'll get there in like Android 20, but I think for a few years it's going to be a lot of things that don't work. I think it's a great idea though, because we're going to especially with foldables, you want that ability to get bigger and bigger and bigger by plugging stuff in.
Mm-hmm.
I think a big difference, though, is that a lot of manufacturers are probably going to abandon or at least heavily scale back their own desktop mode implementation, just because the amount of work and code that's required to completely change like Android's windowing features and add what they've done, just like having to port that over every year is a tremendous amount of work. And that's why I think very few companies have done that at all.
So we'll still see DeX around then. Almost certainly.
They'll probably use a lot of what Android's working on. Yeah.
I will say I ever see DeX around. I mean,
no, I've seen one person use it. I've seen one person use it, and I was like, "Oh my god, this damn camera!" Sorry.
No, you know what you need
that was
to
great. That was perfect because you said I've seen one person use it, and it zoomed in on you as it said it. So it was very dramatic.
360. Whenever I wave my hands, and I wave my hands a lot when talking, it gets real close. It's like, "Oh, you want to zoom in on your face?" I'm like, "No, thank you. It's perfectly fine as it is." But I was going to say, if they're going to bring, like, for me, the biggest issue with even tablets or foldables running Android is Chrome. I use Safari on an iPad mini. I use Safari on an iPhone. I will tell you that Safari on an iPhone 16e with a 6.1 inch screen is more useful to me than Chrome on my Chrome on a what am I using on a Find M5 with its 8-inch screen, because Google if you look at Safari, even on the basic iPhone, you can still get desktop mode, Zoom, all of these different features that are desktop-like, and Chrome's kind of prevented us from using maximizing real estate with a very like bare bones or minimum viable product in Chrome.
Yeah, well, as we are going to talk about a little bit later, might not be Google's problem anymore. That's a little tease ahead. I was going to say real quick before we move on, Nirav, you've seen one person using Dex. I think the next time you run into someone using Dex, you drop everything, you sit down with that person, and you interview them for an article. I want to hear what they have to say.
Or
I think we both know what my first question is. So on behalf of the world, why?
Why do you use it? I know.
Well,
and we're going to get
I'll-
emails from people who do.
I was going to say, I will make the call out to our audience. Many of you listen. Many of you are Samsung users. Are you a Dex user? If so, email contact@androidfaithful.com. Let us know. Send us photos.
Yes,
We would like to know what
please.
your experience with Dex or Dex-like stuff has been.
Love
So,
it. Guarantee you we're going to hear from a few people on this.
Please, yes.
Because people do. And when they do, they are very, very vocal about it. All I'm saying is like, I couldn't even tell you if I've ever noticed out in the wild one person using Dex, just or whatever, or, coming up organically, not like part of our jobs.
Right.
I mean, I give Samsung credit. You plug Dex in, you fire open Word, which I've actually done before. It's a really good experience powered off a phone.
There you go.
This
Okay.
is,
And that's the reason why.
if you're carrying a Fold 6 and you're like, hey, I'm in a pinch, and you go to someone's office, you don't have your laptop on, all of those things. In that scenario, it can absolutely handle a lot of, handle quite a few things that you may not otherwise expect it to off a phone.
Yeah. Well, that is certainly the selling point of Dex. And probably exactly what people writing in are going to say about it too. And I believe it. I get it. It just never works for me. It never solves whatever. I don't have the problem that it solves. Let's put it that way. Speaking of problems and whether they're solved or not, I'll let that kind of linger in the air for a little bit. Australia is recalling the Pixel 4a, and in doing so, it is giving more clues as to why the system update effectively killed battery performance. We've been talking about this for the last couple of months. The Pixel 4a, essentially got an update from Google. Google put out a notice in January to say, hey, you should update your phone. And all it really did was talk up the update and how it changed battery management features. I think the quote is to improve stability of your battery's performance, which, hey, that sounds nice. I want that on my phone. Sure, I'll do it. Stability as in stable enough to not light on fire is what we're realizing, because the Australian recall actually has at least a little bit more detail as far as what this is all about, because Google isn't talking about it. It just blows my mind. I don't understand. Like, Google, why are you not talking about this and getting in front of it? Instead, it just becomes really cagey and weird. The Australian recall says, quote, an automatic firmware update to Android 13 rolled out to Pixel 4a devices, blah, 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 in January. The firmware update provides new battery management features to mitigate the risk of overheating. An overheating battery could pose a risk of fire and or burns to a user. And I put out a little short earlier today because I was just, as I was studying and reading up on this thing, I found myself getting annoyed. It's not like we didn't know. Like, at this point, 2 months later, it's not like we haven't deduced that it probably has something to do with battery fires. But it's just so weird that Google is like, no, just update and sacrifice 53% of your battery on your smartphone. Your phone.
Do you think
is basically
Google's preparing a
useless. We're not
release
telling
that
you
says
why.
they updated it wrong?
Sorry.
Do you
What's
think
that?
Google's preparing a release that says that all those users updated it wrong?
Oh God, I hope they don't do that. Put the onus on the user.
I know.
Well,
right?
it just brings back memories of you're holding it wrong.
100%. You're
Yep.
using it wrong. You're holding it wrong. Yeah, it's just weird to me that we're 2 months into this and it's impacted a lot of people, and people are having to replace their devices because the device that they get post update is 53% less useful. Like, the battery just doesn't last anymore. And I don't know. Like, it could have been like Samsung was in a position like this. And they did admit that it happened. And honestly, I remember at the time with the Note 8 or whatever it was going, oh God, I don't know that Samsung comes back from this. And mind you, that was a long time ago.
Samsung was forced to admit after there were already reports of it catching on fire and exploding.
For sure.
That hasn't happened with the Pixel 4a. So
Thankfully.
A little bit different there.
Yeah.
No, a little bit different. No, absolutely fair. But
they came out mea culpa straight away.
Yeah.
They recovered.
Yeah.
And that's my point. It's like, yeah, it's a big deal. Sure. Nobody that makes a phone wants to like admit that like there's a battery issue that might result in exploding phones, but you kind of have to because it's your business. And like being cagey about it doesn't actually save you. It just kicks the can down the road until everybody actually gets the word. And then you were just caught being cagey. And I don't know, it's weird. And, You're right. Also, Samsung did the same thing. Thank you, Mishaal.
And also you want to control the message here. And this is, you know, they've done their best to control the message, but now they've lost control of it. Right. Something triggered Australia. And now here we are with an article and everyone's covering it. Now it's like, why are they hiding this? Right. So,
right.
It's just a bad scene, unfortunately.
And meanwhile, like, why are they hiding this? We know why they're hiding this. That's the thing. Like, we know the answer. just say it. Like, that's all we need you to do is just say it. So
just say it.
just say it. Just admit. It's okay. You'll get over it. That's
well, they're not having a good month, that's for sure. And we're gonna find out a little more reasons why. We're gonna take a quick break, and we come back. We got more news. All right, so I guess, I mean, it's funny because, you know, I wouldn't go as far as say Google's having a very, very bad, very good March, but they're having a wobbly March, that's for sure, between the Pixel 4a news. And then it was funny because I got the March Pixel update downloaded to my phone, and I was like, oh, I'm going to install that. And then I went and looked on my feed, and I saw all these articles. I'm like, I'm not going to install this at all.
Install that.
Right? There was a parade of responsive users who had issues with the March update that's causing a bunch of issues across the board. On the Pixel side of things, the first one that we heard about was the haptics got tinkered with again. Here, you know, The Verge is sharing the news with us, and other outlets talked about it. How the vibration for notifications and the haptics on the phone started feeling less formidable, a bit more hollow. You know, whatever they did to tweak those haptics changed the way it feels. This happened once before, back in 2022, if you remember, when the notification vibrations on the Pixel 6 felt weakened, and then it took 2 months to fix them. Well, it appears that that seems to have happened as well. I know the writer on The Verge explained, they said that it feels weaker. Selecting text feels like flicking a rubber band, which, describing this problem is some of the most creative writing I've seen people do. Like, how do you describe haptics? Right. And so I thought that was really interesting. Yeah. So curious if anybody did the March Pixel update. If you're feeling weak in haptics, let us know. Anybody in the room? Jason, you didn't? You shook your head.
No,
am I the only?
I didn't.
Yeah, so we're all safe as that yet. So the other issue that cropped up was, and this is the one that really made me pause. The haptics, I didn't mind because I turned vibrating off on my phone. I have no notifications and no interruptions. But after the March update, Pixel phones were having weird display issues. Specifically, it was a bug around a display brightness, where the brightness fluctuates when watching videos in full screen mode. And anything that messes with brightness scares me, because it's like, I want control over the brightness. Even though I have the auto brightness on, it's got to work and do well. And to have the phone randomly get darker or brighter that's the kind of thing that makes you question if you're losing consciousness or not. So like, I feel like that's a pretty important one. But and apparently some folks found a workaround that turning off subtitles or the smooth display option could fix the problem. But likely this is one that they're going to have to fix, you know, in a future update. And then finally, there was some glitches with the Android 15 QPR2 around the fingerprint detector, and the folks over on the Graphene OS forum wrote a lot about it. And it's basically saying that they're not really sure why it's happening, what exactly happened in the update. But there are indeed issues, and they're working on a workaround on it for on the AOSP level. So it just seems like this is a bumpy update for everybody. So
yeah, it happens every once in a while in Android update or Pixel update land. They push something out and like, actually, don't jump on the train.
Yeah. So your mileage may vary if you're planning on updating. If you're on a Pixel, be careful. And it was a packed. We talked about it last week. It was a packed update. There was a lot of stuff in there. That's why I was like, "Ooh, I want to install it," and then I pressed pause. So
happy it didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, I do keep my vibe, my haptics on. I generally keep my ringer off and my haptics on because if it's completely silent, I will miss things. Even with the vibration, I will miss things. I am not a fan of empty, hollow vibration or haptics. So yeah, definitely not updating.
Like flicking a rubber band, Jason.
Flicking a rubber. I'm gonna have to remember that.
It's like pulling muscles from a shell.
Boing, boing. Oh, boy.
Anyway.
All right. Time to get serious.
As Ron alluded to earlier, a lot of these problems may not even be Google's in the future if the DOJ's proposed remedies go through.
They're no good, very bad March continues.
Because earlier this week, we got a major update in the US v. Google antitrust case, which, if you aren't aware, started in early 2023 under the Biden DOJ, but concluded in September 2024 before the Trump admin took over. So the court ruled in the case that Google has a monopoly on the online search market, and the court is now in the process of determining what to actually do in response. So the Biden DOJ proposed several remedies, including a potential divestiture of Chrome and Android, as well as other measures to prevent Google from dominating the growing AI space as well. With things up in the air after the transition to the Trump administration, it was kind of unclear how the DOJ, if at all, would change its approach to the Google case. Well, now we have a clearer picture because the DOJ is still asking the court to force Google to fully divest itself of Chrome, but it isn't asking the court to force Google to halt its AI investments or sell off Android. So now what will happen if they accept the proposed remedies? Well, if the judge agrees, then Google will be forced to sell off Chrome, which is used by billions of users, to a competitor who will be vetted by the US government. And Google will also not be allowed to release any new browsers during the term of the judgment. Google argued that being forced to limit its investments in AI would weaken the US leadership in the field, and it seems the DOJ agrees, as the government is no longer seeking to force Google to divest from competing AI companies like Anthropic. But it will have to notify the government before Google makes any new investments if the DOJ's proposed remedies are accepted. And more relevant to the Android faithful is instead of giving Google the option to either sell off Android or make significant changes to the platform, Google no longer has the option to sell off Android because they've removed that proposed remedy from what they're asking. But they are asking for significant restrictions to be placed on Google nonetheless. For one, they're asking for Google to be blocked from making any of its own search or generative AI products mandatory on Android devices. Two, they're asking for Google to be blocked from pressuring its partners to use Google Search or AI services over competitors. And if neither of these remedies are effective at reducing Google's monopoly in search, then the DOJ says it will, at that point, ask the court to force Google to sell off Android to a vetted company. So, yeah, things are still up in the air. We don't know exactly what's going to happen as a result of this case, but it could still be quite dramatic.
Yeah, I mean, you're handing the keys of one of the like it's just crazy to me. Like I get it, I get how all this stuff works, kind of, sort of, but it's just crazy to me to consider. Like Google has built Chrome to be what it is, and being forced to hand that over to a buyer, you're just basically giving them the whole bucket of money, essentially. I mean, they're obviously paying for it, but man, they get a lot for that money.
Do you know what, though? I think it's the lesser of two evils. From a Google perspective, look, them not being in charge of Chrome, I can say that whilst I absolutely, I can see why that's a bad thing. Let's also be real. Chrome's a bit of a they've made it what it is, but they've also ladened it with requiring the most resources possible.
Oh yeah,
It doesn't work half the time.
light
Things
browser,
don't
that's for
work.
sure.
You know, I'll give you an
Yeah.
example. It got to the point where I've used the same Chrome profile syncing for everything for nearly a decade. Yeah. It's got to the point where half the websites where I spend more time browsing in incognito mode than I do, because even with cleared history, cleared caches, and an almost entire reset, websites are broken, things are broken. I was like, oh, do you know what? I think I've just got to start a whole new browser. And I was like, okay, let me just try a fresh Chrome a fresh Chrome profile with I do with my hot.tech. Transformative, fast, doesn't kill resources. So they've done well, but it's the lesser of two evils, because I think they can survive losing Chrome. People are still going to search. People are going to always, it's going to take a long time for human behavior to stop going Google it. When you reach that point, it's like, what's a vacuum cleaner? Everyone calls it a Hoover. Like we've reached that point where it'll always be that. But if they were forced to sell off Android, that I think is a near death knell for that, is a massive death knell alongside that. Like, I think they would struggle. And also I think Android would struggle because Google does bring so many competing companies together, and they've done an exceptionally good job. If you look at what they're doing with AI, Oppo has a new feature they've developed with Google. Samsung's launching with Google. Honor's launching. They've finally figured out how to be the centerpiece in a way that doesn't like screw their partners, basically.
Yeah.
And that's a great point. Like I got to wonder what the business viability of a business that's solely Chrome, like what is the growth plan for that or not, right? But whereas Android, I could see the business viability of it, but to your point, that is ultimately damaging to Google because it has become such a big portion of what Google's mix. 10, 15 years ago, it was search. Search was the main thing, right? But we're seeing that whittle down, right? And now it's Android and services and all this sort of stuff. And so, it'll be
if they're forced not to use Google services. I think we go back to the Wild West, where there are definitely good things about it, competing app stores, all of that, no doubt. But there's points where it doesn't. Like I've talked to the guys at Apostrophe before, and they struggle. Part of their, I wouldn't say struggles, but part of their challenges is the fact that everything is so well integrated. Yes. My brother just bought a Mate XT, the trifold. He spent 2-3 days trying to get any of the tutorials to get Google Apps to work, not because he wanted the Play Store, but because WhatsApp was so indebtedly tied to GMS services, and he uses WhatsApp. Like, there are realms where this doesn't make sense, where it's like, okay, maybe this isn't the greatest thing, but I think the solution isn't going to be a government-led thing, because the government's always going to, it's either the nuclear switch or not. It's like hey, you need to sell it, or no, you don't. They don't truly have the specialist knowledge to go, these are the parts you need to fix.
Right.
So
that's a good point.
I personally have not had any issues really with Chrome, and I think actually it's gotten a lot better than it has since I started using it. They've added a lot of features like the Chrome tab syncing, the ability to move tabs between your phone and device easily, your phone and PC easily, and a lot of other like personalization features, and like the tab freezing in the background. Like a lot of things that used to require extensions are now just built in to the browser. So I personally think it's a great browser still. I know a lot of people disagree in terms of privacy needs and stuff, but I do think it has gotten better. In terms of what would happen to Google if they were forced to sell off Chrome, I do think it would be a bigger deal than what you think would happen to Nirave, because the reason, like the main benefit to Google is the fact that they can make Google search the default search engine in Chrome. Like that was one of the things they were forced to stop doing in the EU, off of that search selection screen. Just having that default be Google, and the fact that so many people have accumulated to defaulting to Chrome as the web browser of choice has given them such tremendous market share that forcing them to sell it off and then no longer having control over what default search engine Chrome will have would potentially significantly reduce their market share. And especially on Android, because they preload Chrome on Android devices, well, if Google is no longer the preferred default search engine on Chrome, what benefit would there be for Google to push OEMs to preload Chrome on Android devices? So they would lose a lot of search market share that way as well. So I think there's a lot of potential downsides to Google if they're forced. Obviously, they don't want to sell off Chrome. You know, they realize how important it is to their business. So I do think it would hurt them pretty significantly.
Could we, I didn't think about it from that perspective. You're absolutely right. Like the Android piece, especially, is probably the bit that will damage them. But I wonder, could we see them just pull more Apple style deals, whereby this camera, sorry,
It's
where they decide, okay, do you know what we're actually going to do? We've been forced to divest Chrome. We're going to actually start to pay these OEMs to make us, because there's still there's nothing illegal in them doing that. In going, we don't care what, because this is the point. I don't think they need Chrome as much as they need to be the default search on everything. If their business is still always going to be search, and if they can get Discover and Gemini, and I don't think a lot of these companies are going to ditch them at this point. So a lot of this will be, maybe Gemini is the new GMS, where it's like, hey, if you want Gemini, which has got all of these features, you also need to use X, Y, Z, and you need to make default search and things like that, and strike those deals in a way that perhaps they can lessen the impact of being forced to divert.
They've already been doing those deals in the past. That's kind of exactly what got them in this position in the first place, by bundling like the Google Play Store with search and Gmail and everything like that. So I think that would just get them another antitrust case.
Well, I mean, I still don't think we're done. I think this is possibly the start, especially when you look at, this is the DOJ, which will obviously impact the business as a whole.
100%.
And then I wouldn't be surprised if, as soon as this lot gets settled, there's like, right, the sharpened knives in Europe start to come out. And then also China was looking at them. Like there's a lot of interesting ones where you're like, are we witnessing the Microsoft DOJ case of the late 90s of our time?
Yeah, with Google. Yep. I mean, I think we might be. Yeah, it's going to be real interesting for the company.
Yep. For sure.
Yeah.
Whew.
Interesting stuff. Meaty.
Yep.
Meaty. Well, we do want to take some time, though, in the midst of all this wonderful discussion, all this news, all this MWC-ness, to do our patron pick. And every week we pick 3 stories and we ask our lovely, lovely patrons to vote on them by today. And then, we vote. We will discuss the winningest one. And not only that, we also asked for a submission of a lovely, lovely hero droid to go with our patron pick. And this week, in anticipation of St. Patrick's Day, we have a lovely submission by, I'm so sorry, I can't see who's this lovely android. So
it was by me.
It was by Ron. Oh my gosh, it was by Ron.
Good job, Ron.
My bad. So Ron's got us a lovely fuzzy android. It's really cool because it's like fuzzy like Mishaal's android, but still like the android dolls. It was like
it's got texture. It's
got texture.
It looks like it again. It goes back the AI android. There is a chapter of AI image generation that makes the bug droid as if it was a costume like you would see at Disney World that a character that someone's wearing. So it's got a velvety texture to it, which is weird. So
and a swanky, St. Patrick's Day hat as well.
Yes, because next Monday is St. Patrick's Day. We'll miss it, so I want it to be festive. So there you go.
You know what the most impressive part of this image is?
Yes.
The fact that the text in the back is
the text
legible
is actually
there's
legit.
There's a TV behind the bar at the pub that the bug droid is celebrating St. Patrick's Day, and it says Android News in it in the sans serif lowercase. Like it looks like the Android logo. Yeah. So
and legible.
I'm not sure about you guys, but I really want to pop open, like have a pint or a glass of prosecco with this Android. I think it'd be super cool.
It really does seem
giant
like
squishy hug almost.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Dog's going nuts.
Exactly.
Saddle up against that up next to that bar and have a drink. I'm game.
All right. Well,
that's
that
a good
is
image. Gotta
very, very festive. Thank you. So it doesn't have to be Ron to submit the image. Any audience member can, but Ron submitted a real cracker this week. And we got 3 cracking stories for you to vote for our patrons to vote on this week. So the least winningest one with 23% was the fact that Deutsche Telekom and Perplexity announced a new AI phone priced at under 1K. So interesting given the things that we just talked about this show already, but we're not talking about that. The second winningest one was that Acer is making a smartphone comeback. Well, good for them, but that's all we're going to say about it this week. What we do have to talk about is something that I actually really, really, really appreciate, and that is GBoard's latest design change has users, quote, up in arms. So if you're like me and you're on the GBoard beta, last couple weeks you might have gotten a weird surprise in that all of a sudden you opened up GBoard and the keys went from rounded rectangles to super, super pilly. And apparently, reportedly in some cases, complete perfect circles. So this is part of the GBoard beta. If you're not in the beta, you might not have seen it. And even if you are in the beta, the appearance of this in the wild has been a little bit sketchy. But yes, basically GBoard is experimenting with different designs of the keyboard. And I think most of the response has been quite negative. I would have to add myself to that. I opened up my keyboard and said, WTF, what is this? And I don't know, before I go on a rant about how much I hated this, did anyone else experience this and fat finger all their messages for the rest of the day like I did? Or
I haven't gotten it yet.
I switched to I barely use Gboard. I am firmly a Swift key man at heart, mostly because it syncs across every one of my devices and I don't need to transfer dictionaries. But I did switch over to when I was using the Pixel 9 for a couple of days. And I noticed this and I was like, nope, put it down, picked up another phone, went Swift key. I was like, okay, now we're back to something I can use. Like they've gone super pilly, it's super hard, and they're trying to do what Swift key's done, where you've got all these different shapes and sizes of keys and stuff. But I think it's definitely a beta.
It is definitely beta. And for myself, funny enough, we talked, Tom and I talked about this show on DTS Briefing, which you should watch because also Jason does it too. But I literally talked about this with Tom on Friday. And that evening, my keys reverted to the original rectangular shape. So this must be some kind of crazy A/B test. And I don't know.
I'm on the latest
last long.
GBoard. I don't have the I don't have the circular. I have the rectangular.
Do you have the beta?
ones. Yeah.
Are you on the beta?
I'm not on the beta.
So I don't know.
I don't know
Someone
what
at the
I am.
A/B test might be just flipping variables and switches because maybe people just didn't like it enough. But yeah, no. So if you are seeing pills and you don't like them, the only option you have, other than hope that you get switched off the A/B, is to go into the theme settings and to either like press the one that you already have or just really select any theme, and it will bring up a menu that allows you to turn off borders. This isn't reverting pill shape to rectangle shape. It's just eliminating borders so that the letters float in space. But if you really, really, really didn't like the pills, I'm holding my hand up right now, that's an option for you. Or you could just wait like me, and then maybe whoever is switching the switches will switch yours off. But yeah, that is the deal with GBoard. A lot of people didn't like it. I did not. It just seemed to mess with my muscle memory. And I don't know if that's a thing about how they did it or just me being a cranky old lady, but I don't know. There you go.
I think if you're going to change something people use 1,000 times a day, make 300 small changes, not one big change.
Very good point. Absolutely.
Not one human being likes change, and the people who do are just lying to themselves and others.
Yep. True.
Well, there you go. And also want to take the time to shout out some patrons without whom this show could literally not be possible. And we want to thank Matthew Lovell and Bruce Stone for your patronage. And if you are interested in helping us make this show happen, patreon.com/AndroidFaithful.
Indeed.
Oh man, we're
All right.
running
Well, that's
along.
the first half.
We got so much MWC to talk, right? Yeah. So
Okay. Yeah. We're gonna have to rattle through MWC. Then we got more hardware news, and then we got some app news. Just a couple of stories. So we can do that. We can make this happen. We can make it work and get Nirave to bed at a decent hour ish. More coming up after this break. All right, he says still early, so we're gonna go at least another 3 hours. So no, we won't do that to you. We might, because we're gonna talk a little bit about Mobile World Congress, just a little bit. We don't need to talk about like the big news.
My
blah,
favorite
blah, because
podcast does 4.5-hour episodes. I'm just saying, and does
are you
multiple of them on a
serious?
single topic. So
That's too long for me.
All right. I mean, we saw a whole bunch of stuff at Mobile World Congress, and one of the first things that I personally saw was the Xiaomi concept phone. So Xiaomi made a custom version of the Xiaomi 15 that you can basically attach a huge camera onto the back of. We've seen concepts like this before. Realme did one at the same event that Jason will talk about soon. But what makes this one special is that the camera doesn't go on top of the phone's existing lenses. Instead, it magnetically attaches to the back of the phone and then sends data over an optical system, which Xiaomi describes as basically lasers. So Xiaomi invented a new tech it calls laser link, allowing the sensor in this huge camera to transmit raw data to the phone at an incredible 10 gigabit per second speed with nanosecond level latency, and also no pairing, battery, or storage needed other than what's in the phone already. So the camera itself that you see on the back of a phone is a 35mm f1.4 lens with a 100 megapixel Type 4.3 sensor, which Xiaomi says is twice as large as the largest smartphone sensors on the market. So what is the purpose of this whole setup? Sure. It is a big sensor. Well, the purpose of this whole thing is that you don't have to worry about the optics on the phone anymore, and you also don't have to build a phone around camera attachments either. Plus, Xiaomi says this laser link technology could theoretically be used for more than just this camera setup in the future. This camera is just Xiaomi's way of demoing this laser link technology right now.
I mean, neat, but you still have to carry around the lens with you. You know what I mean? Like,
well, you take it when you need to. When you need to go somewhere to take a lot of photos, you take that lens with you. When you don't need to, just leave it at home.
I don't take my phone and my camera. I just take my phone and some lenses.
I wonder. So 15 Ultra, if you've got that, you've got a good camera in your pocket anyway.
Yeah.
But maybe it's 3-4 years from now when your Renos not your Renos, that's an Oppo, your Redmis, where they don't need to pay, you don't need to pay a huge amount to get a good solid phone, but they're like, the reason it's cheaper is because we're not stuffing it with hardware, but if you still need to take great photos, use the laser link technology instead, because that would be super interesting and cool, and especially if it works with any lenses and any thread type and all of those things as well, you know?
Yeah. Well, along these lines, so the largeness of what you were just talking about pales in comparison to Realme's version of this, which is it is a phone that, you know, with the sensor kind of embedded into the phone, and then it's got this lock, this like and I'm sure it has a name, but I didn't write it down, that literally locks, like screws on and locks into the phone base, and then you can put Micro Four Thirds lens onto it and like screw it into place. And I mean, this was that to another level. There's no automatic focus on it. It's just manual focus. But I mean, you know, again, like with this concept, it was interesting because it was like, I said ZTE in the video and I completely flubbed that. It's Realme. When I asked to look at it, he brings out this gigantic suitcase. I mean, it's like a huge suitcase, puts it on the table, opens it up, and every single attachment, there were like 4 attachments in there, has its own kind of like separate kind of foam surrounded area. And I'm just like, okay, this is neat. You know, again, it's neat. It's neat that you can do this. This isn't the first time that we've seen this, but not very practical. Like if I'm going that big, why not just have a camera? Like why not just have a very large camera? Then
it's hard to describe like the weight ratio between this huge regular size lens. This is like a good mid to large size lens, and that tiny phone. You do not want to be holding just the phone with this heavy ass lens.
No,
you know what I mean?
Weird. It does feel weird. It's like wait a minute, like it's massive. Right? It looks massive. It's massive and it feels massive. Like it's heavy and weighty. And like, you know, you got to make sure, like there were a couple of times where I'm like, am I going to drop it? Imagine like, you know, when I'm holding onto the phone feels so insignificant compared to everything else. It feels kind of wimpy, you know, by comparison, but neat nonetheless.
Holder like a camera. There's like very little. I remember seeing this and I was like, oh, this is great. And then just like you, I was like, and why? Yeah. And I think the answer is they did it because they came to a show they had a booth, even though it was tucked away in the corner,
Yeah.
and they needed something really special to show off because everyone else was doing concepts. So why not?
And it
Yeah.
worked, right? And but there's
Oh, yeah.
definitely what I
Totally.
love about MWC and a lot of these phones is like, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Oh,
Right?
but I kind of think like just because you can, sure, go ahead and do it.
Right.
Because it's so much fun to look at and neat, and I'm sure it leads to other things. But like, I'm not sure what RealMe is saying here is expect this in the store next year. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I don't think that's the end game for this. It really is like, hey, check out what we did, and maybe that leads to something else that we don't see. Maybe it's 3D chess. I don't know. But I say keep doing it because it's fun to see these things. And
I hope they never. This is the thing that makes MWC special.
Totally.
People come, people show off literally the world's wares, and then people go, and you won't see a lot of those products ever again in person.
But they're fascinating.
I mean, I remember TCL's folding phone wallet concepts from 5 years ago, and I'm like, hey guys, you're gonna plan to bring them out anytime? And they're like,
no, we've moved on. We moved on. We have these other things now that we'll definitely
Well,
talk
you know
about.
what's not a concept? The T-Mobile AI phone. Although in their press release, they only did show off renders. But surprisingly, at their booth, they actually had the phone out in public for you to look at. And I did get a chance to briefly take a look at the AI phone powered by Perplexity. Basically, you know, what they're doing is they're building a mid-range or budget Android phone, and they're setting Perplexity as a default Android assistant. You can access it by pressing the power key or by tapping this button on the lock screen, and then you can ask Perplexity any question. It's just the same default assistant that you can get right now if you download and load Perplexity as your default AI assistant. You can also open the new Magenta AI app and do AI searches inside the app, and or also access this AI vision feature that lets you ask questions about what you're seeing through your camera. Honestly, I think calling it an AI phone is kind of overhyping it, considering everything that I saw in this demo you can already do on other phones with Gemini, Google Assistant,
100%.
ChatGPT, or whatever app you want to use. But they want to call it an AI phone, and
I tell you, this gave me strong vibes of 10 years ago and the Facebook phone.
No, the Facebook phone.
You know,
the
whenever,
cha-cha
all-
on the salsa.
whenever we see,
wow, yes, the cha-cha
Yep.
and the salsa. Oh my, I forgot about the code names.
Yep. So
honestly, the most interesting thing about this phone to me is just the fact that it's shipping with an assistant other than Google as a default.
Yeah.
Like it's shipping with
But-
Perplexity. That would be the first phone with Perplexity by default.
Isn't the headline that key point that it's an AI phone for under $1,000? Because
When I talked to them at
A,
the
what
booth,
is the
they
price?
made it
B,
sound
like,
they made it
This
sound like it's
better
gonna
be
be like
way
the
under.
press release made it sound like it's gonna be a super premium phone, but they made it very clear it's gonna be like a mid-range device at best. Like this
I mean,
is just for like
hopefully
budget
this means
phones.
that it won't be still a $950 phone just because it's AI.
I don't think it's gonna be even half that.
It'll be 500. They'll be like, well, it's under 1,000.
Yeah.
Told you.
They were like, if you ask them why, they're like, we don't know. We're still figuring that piece out. We'll see what people think first.
Well, I might just jump ahead real quick because it ties in with what you're talking about. I put out a video earlier, and it's like a roundup of all Mobile World Congress stuff. And the Nubia Zubidoo, whatever it's called, Nubia Z70 Ultra, it has DeepSeek as its assistant. And so everybody's, you know, in the AI world has been talking about DeepSeek and how it's a big disruptor and everything. And it's an agent that runs on the
why
phone.
wouldn't they promote this as the DeepSeek phone? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's like-
Yeah. Well, I mean, that button on the side, well, I
Yeah.
guess the multifunction button, which, by the way, was a trend. Like, all these phones now are coming out with an extra button that's like a multifunction button. On this one, if you hold it down for a half
Hopefully, it's
second,
better
summons.
placed than this thing.
Yeah.
What am I looking at? I've got a small screen.
Hold that up again.
Oh,
The
Yeah.
nothing. Yeah.
oh, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
I just
nothing-
finished writing a review, and I can tell you my one thing about this phone.
Uh-huh.
I have never. I thought I'd forgotten how to take screenshots on an Android phone because it's
was
been a
not
while
easy.
since I had taken that many times I've locked it by accident. So
Yeah.
I love the idea of extra buttons, the idea of going thin, no buttons, going too thin for that. Give us more, but maybe think about how you're using it as well.
Wow, yeah. Well, I think a lot of these companies are going to think about how they use them as if they are AI portals, essentially. That seems to be the direction as far as I can tell. That's exactly what Nothing's doing with the Essential space. You know, it's basically an AI button with limited function now, but I bet you they grow that. But
I like the concept of it though.
Well,
Mishaal,
speaking of AI, let me jump ahead too,
Oh,
Jason,
okay, yeah.
because on the AI train, Honor was at MWC talking up its AI agent that can do tasks like book an Italian restaurant via OpenTable or remove a person from an image for you. So I got a quick demo of this AI agent in action on the Honor Magic 7 Pro at the Qualcomm booth, who was there to highlight the phone's chipset and how it's running these tasks on device. So in the demo that I got, you can see the person ask the phone to remove a person with yellow pants from an image in the gallery. It then formulates a multi-step, 4-step plan specifically to carry out this task, and then it does it. From what I saw, it does work, albeit a little slowly. Like, it takes a few seconds for it to actually launch the app.
Although this
enter the edit
listing
mode,
out the steps,
I think
the person. It does list out the steps, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
What they told me was the whole thing has been, the demo was done to show step by step versus actually doing it.
Right. I can see this being useful for people who don't know how to do certain tasks on their phone or people with accessibility needs, but I am a bit skeptical of how scalable this is. Like, how many apps can you actually do these kind of functions for? And how gracefully will it work in most situations? I am very skeptical that it will be very useful across a broad spectrum of apps and with a broad spectrum of tasks, because we only had 2 handpicked demos to be shown at this event, and as you can tell, there's not a lot of AI agents that can do what Honor is promising right now.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting because on my own, it was one of my favorite things from MWC, just because it was like AI that felt useful. It was like, oh, I can see this. Like, forgetting, if my mum's like, man, I wish I could get rid of such and such or this imperfection in this photo. Forget every other use case. If all it becomes is a way to talk to an AI and not have to use Magic Eraser yourself as a regular human being, that's already been something that I think a lot of people would use. You then get into restaurant bookings. I don't know why people love restaurant bookings as a thing. I think a lot of people are like, oh, let me look at the menu. Oh, that looks good. Let me just go and book it. I'm not going to call an AI to do half the work that they want us to do. But flight bookings, can you imagine if we can get to the point which they said to me, it's the directional. It already works with third parties like booking.com and your airline apps. It's already got support for that. If it can get to the point where it's like, hey, there's 2 of us. These are my dates. These are what my preferences. I want more affordable flights, but I want a nicer hotel. Like, when I book a flight or a vacation, for example, I'm always, well, what is it if I fly out of Oslo or fly out of this city or that city to find the cheapest, highest premium class? If AI can do all of those things, which I assume an agentic agent could or should be able to eventually, that's where I'm like, okay, we finally reached a point where AI, this is the AI that human beings have been waiting for, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, on that Nubia that I showed off with the DeepSeek agent, it has an agent, and I just asked it, like, I want to book an Uber to this hotel. And, it fired right into it, got me to the confirmation page. Didn't go any further because I have to click OK. But, they are going in that direction. We'll see how accurate they are in that direction. Yeah, and you're going to see a lot of agents. This is the year of the agents right now, so we're going to see a lot more of them. Real quick, Techno Spark Slim. This was one of the earlier devices that I saw while I was there. 5.75 millimeters thin, which is pretty darn thin.
We talked about this phone last week. I'm so glad you got to hold it. Is this the thinnest smartphone in the market now? This is I
don't know that it is. I know that they're saying that it is, but I've gotten a lot of my Instagram on this just crossed 1 million. I've never had that happen.
Congrats.
Before.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But with that comes a ton of comments and a lot of people that say that's not the thinnest. Of course, I got the spec wrong when I spoke it out loud versus what's on the screen, but engagement. Anyways, so but it was a really nice phone. I mean, I gotta say, like in person, in hand, it felt really nice. It's kind of like, okay, this is another trend, the slimming down of smartphones.
Jason,
whether you like it or not.
I have to ask, did you have the same epiphany as I did when you actually finally held that phone? Because before, like leading up to that device, I was always like, I don't get it. Why do people care about thinner phones? Why do people want thinner phones? But when I held it, I finally got it. It's not the thinness, it's the weight. It's how light it feels.
Yeah. And they actually added weight to it because
that was my question of how it so does it get in the way of your actually using the phone because it's too light?
No, it's so light that it just like, I mean, I'm coming from, this is a chunky phone. It's a Xiaomi 15 Ultra. It is a chunker. Yeah, it deserves that weight because of this gigantic camera and all its premium hardware, but I definitely feel it in my hands. But when honestly, I held the Spark Slim, it's like, wow, this is nice. It's so light. I could hold it all day and I wouldn't feel any arm fatigue.
I absolutely love how light it is. I, for example, switched into a 16E just now, and even though it's not a 16 Pro, it is so much lighter that I'm like, oh, I understand why thin, light, these are things that matter again.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
basically, the lighter it is, the less damage it does when it falls on your face whilst you're reading something at night.
Yeah, but the flip side of that is the lighter and thinner it is, the more likelihood it is going to fold into two pieces when I sit down in my car and it's in my pocket. So it better be durable, even though it's that thin. That is a big question mark. We are running super long. So what's your last pick, Mishaal?
My last pick is a phone that doesn't fold in 2, but it folds in 3. I finally got a chance to try the Huawei Mate XT thanks to friend of the show, Ben Sin. And yes, it is as cool as you think it is. I really wish I could get one for myself, but unfortunately, it is over $3,000 still to import one. And because it doesn't fully support Google Apps, it's kind of an iffy if I even want to get one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is an amazing phone. And I really wish that more trifold devices like it come out in the market, especially the Samsung one that's been long rumored.
Yeah.
Did you guys try the Techno one?
Yes. Well,
yes,
I mean,
Jason did actually. That's a concept phone.
Try it in my hands because my understanding is they weren't letting people hold on to it. But
so I
asked them to pull it out, fold it.
I held it. They let me hold it. They let me fold it. Yeah,
you gotta know when to hold them and fold them, Nirave.
But it's really nice, and it made me go. And I saw the Mate XT as well, and I was like, huh.
Good job.
I think. And then my brother messaged me on WhatsApp 2 hours later going, I just went and bought the Mate XT. I was like, that's bully for you. It's lovely that you are capable of living in a place where it's sold. I hope you're incredibly happy with yourself.
I hope you enjoy your wonderful smartphone. Yeah.
It took him 3 seconds to go, I need help. I was like, yeah, I know.
There you go. And finally, I think this is a good one to point out because it makes I'm sure it's going to make you happy for 2 reasons, Ron. One, it's Doogie and they have a lot of rough and like tough phones.
Yep.
Definitely a Matteo Doni brand. Yeah. And 2, when I was walking through the halls, I look over and I'm like, wait a minute. Nothing is not the only company doing the glyphs anymore. Apparently, Doogie has their elves. That's what they call it, the elves. Oh, and I was like, oh my goodness, everything is a copy of something else. So there you go.
Kind of looks like a winking clown, doesn't it? Because the glyph is like a circular glyph in the middle, and there's one that's kind of a flat line, another one that's like a smaller zero. So it looks like a winking clown and a little smile at the bottom.
It's
y'all check out the video.
Yeah.
The thing
just gives me we have nothing at home vibes.
Yeah. But then, like, the only thing that they showed is the whole thing blinking, on one of the other ones anyways. No, like, patterns or anything like that. So I don't know if some of them blink.
I think Doogie is the definition of why do we do this? Because we can. Because it's the press coverage we're going to get that will sustain us for the next 9 months.
Yeah, you could be right.
I say this with love. I've used some of their phones. They're half decent at times, but like, with love.
They should put that on their marketing. Half decent ... at times. That's
you can buy the
selling combination right there of words. Okay, that was Mobile World Congress in a nutshell.
In a nutshell.
I will just say before we move on, I felt at home at Mobile World Congress. I worked my tail off. I know we all did. It was exhausting. I still have a cough. Like I was very tired the whole time I was there because the time change and everything. But I felt more at home at Mobile World Congress with what they were putting out on the floor than I have many years at CES. It had exactly what I was looking for.
Fascinating. So you
So
just
it's fun.
needed to fly to Spain for it.
Yeah. Okay, Nirave, real super quick. You have two. I know
All
that
right,
we kind of
I've got two from
super quick.
MWC that you guys have not covered that I really want to mention. First,
Okay.
Xiaomi SU7. I frigging love this car. I sat
the
inside.
car.
It's got a fridge. It's got a diffuser. You can screen mirror your phone. It's got mounts that do 60-watt charging for an iPad at the back that can control the car. This thing is just like what cars should be. And I'm like, okay, it's coming globally. I'm really interested. The second one that was like super fascinating for me, smart contact lenses. This company called Expansio. It was hidden away in the depths of Hall 6. But I really liked it because what they've got is they've got a series of different lenses. One is a small smart lens thing, and I think it's 0.6 millimeters by 0.6 millimeters display on the contact lens that you have to look really close to be able to see it. So it gives you a little heads up display. But then the super interesting one as well is they're doing ones that can look at ocular pressure, and then for my benefit can tell you things like cholesterol, glucose, all of that based on the capillaries in your eye. When you go for an eye test, there's a reason that every optician has a retinopathy machine, because it can start to look at that. But you have to pay significant premiums more for what I tell you is simpler than an eye test in terms of time and effort from anyone else. They charge you more because they can. There is so much potential with this, and they're going into human trials, I think, next year, towards the end of next year. But I saw it and I was like, okay, yeah, this is the kind of cool stuff that is game changing.
Yeah.
It has the potential.
Interesting. I remember hearing about Google working on this sort of technology as well for same kind of approach, the kind of glucose monitoring stuff with the contact.
Glucose monitoring, just as an aside, is going to be the next health frontier that everyone competes on.
I believe it.
I've got stuff I can't say, but I have a feeling the next 2 years are going to be when we start to see some real progress from all these companies, because these guys are over a decade working into it. And there's only so long they need before they do figure it out to a point where the FDA is like, yeah, we'll approve that.
Yeah, I believe it. Absolutely. Cool. Thank you for throwing those in. Mobile World Congress, Barcelona.
So jealous.
Hamon was great, but
finally what I've been waiting for. How was the Hamon?
I didn't have a wide variety of Hamon, but I definitely had Hamon, and it was good.
You tasted the Hamon in the Barcelona. And all was good.
Ron.
Ron, if you ever fly through Barcelona airport, they do sell really good hamon in the airport. Just saying.
Oh, good to know. Okay, clever. Okay, I didn't know that.
You don't want duty-free Hamon.
hey, we'll take whatever Hamon we can get. Come on, let's not be
I'm not
snobby.
speaking from experience. It's probably
had I known I was being on this, I would have bought back hamon for you guys.
So to eat in front of us.
Or I would have
like, oh, how
told
delicious.
Jason, you should really take hamon.
Seriously, put this in your backpack. All right. We've got so much show.
Okay. All right. So we're going to take a quick leaky peeky look at the Pixel 10 series real quick. And I guess there's some news that isn't news, and there's some news that actually is news. So the general news is that Android Headlines had a bunch of CADs in collaboration with OnLeaks, and the TLDR or TLDL is that the Pixel 10 series will have a baseline and a Pro, which is the same size as the baseline, just like the Pixel 9, and a Pixel 10 Pro XL. So the individual models are not different. And in fact, the dimensions are incredibly similar. For the 10 and 10 Pro, which are, by the way, the same size, they're only about 0.1 millimeter thicker than the Pixel 9 series. So basically the same size, more or less the same screen size, same bezel size on the Pixel 10 baseline and Pixel 10 Pro. And again, both will be the same size. Similar cases will fit both of them. The Pixel 10 Pro XL is very similar in that it is also just barely off of the Pixel 9 Pro XL's dimensions, being 0.1 millimeters shorter. But if you're curious, You can look at the renders on Android headlines or look up what the current Pixel 10 Pro XL is. Or if you're like, for example, Clinton Woodward in the chat who joined the Pro XL fam, that's what the Pixel 10 Pro XL is going to look like as far as we know. So there are a few differences though. So a big one is that according to these CADs, the Pixel 10 baseline will actually have a triple camera array. And you kind of see them. It looks like 1, 2, 3. If you look at the current Pixel 9, you do see that that's what was one of the distinguishing features, is that it only has a dual camera array rather. But I mean, a lot of it's the same. Bezels are the same. Generally, the mostly flat, but slightly curved sides at the edge. Power button is still above the volume, which I know drives some people crazy. And similar to last year's Pixel 9 series, the baseline Pixel 9 will have slightly differently colored edges, or just different material edges, but they will be matte, whereas the Pixel 10 Pro series rather will have glossy sides for that little extra like touch of high premium. We expect them to launch with Android 16, which makes sense because Android 16 is going to be releasing in June, and we expect the Pixel 10 series in August. So hopefully, probably we'll get the Android 16 on that. And another big change though is who is making the processor for the Pixel 10 Pro. And it is really noticeable that the Pixel 10 Pro series will be the first to feature chips made by TSMC, as opposed to previously when the Pixel Pros were using Samsung Foundry manufactured chips. So it'll be really interesting to see what changes they made. Of course, with some of the Samsung Foundry chips in the past, we've had like overheating issues, modem issues. So we'll see how this series ends up. I mean, it's so similar. I feel like the Pixel 9 series, at least for me, was a big winner. So maybe they were like, hey, it worked. We're going to stick with it for the most part. So I don't know.
Like, it's really
I mean, if they're adding a telephoto camera to the base model, what differentiates it from the Pro?
totally. That is a good
So
point.
they probably
Right.
can do what nothing did. You end up with a 2x, a 3x, or a 2x, a 5x,
Right.
and stuff like that. But I'll tell you, Pixel 9, and it's going to be shock of you people. First time, the Pixel 9 Pro was the first phone from Google, virtually ever, and I think Mishaal knows where I'm going with this, that I've actually been like, oh wow, I can use this as my daily driver. It is the first time Google's nailed a phone for me and nailed a software experience, because I really dislike Pixel Launcher. And I'm super excited for this, because I'm like, as long as if you keep the essence of probably your best ever, one of your best ever phones ever made, and you make it a little bit better, you're onto a winning strategy.
All right. And just to close it off, the Pixel 10 series reportedly will be the debut of a new assistant. It was rumored to be the Pixie Assistant back in 2023, and we didn't see it in Pixel 9.
I remember that.
But the now styled Pixel Sense is your agentic Gemini-y new version of At a Glance, because the idea is that it's actually providing a very personal experience based on the things you do on your Pixel, which I know was what we all liked about At a Glance, right? It was really feeling like it kind of understood to some degree what you were doing. But now with AI of all shapes and flavors, Pixel Sense will be looking to provide, access and process data from 18 plus Google apps, which I'm not all going to mention, but of course, Calendar, Chrome, Gmail, Maps, Photos, and YouTube, obvious suspects, but a lot of first-party apps. And the assistant will actually be able to process various media files, including text, images, AI content, metadata, and provide personal predictive suggestions, task completion. So it should be. So this is where the agentic part comes in. It purports to be able to do some of your common tasks, and as well as adapt to your user interests. So if you wanted a beefed up Gemini-'d, AI'd, agentic, outed, steroid-filled assistant, you might have that in Pixel Sense in the Pixel 10 series. So we'll wait and see on that.
But Gemini is still going to exist, and Gemini, I'm confused, because I'm like, wait, there's Gemini Live. Neither of them is very good at smart home stuff, but I presume we'll see a change of that at I/O. But so there's still a system if you don't want to use Gemini and you choose not to pay for Gemini. But now there's Pixel Sense, which basically sounds like Gemini Live, but branded for Pixels, so it's only available on Pixel devices.
I don't think it's
And
going
I'm
to be
just
an
sitting
actual
there
AI
going,
assistant.
WTF is going on here?
It's-
Because I'm
so
confused as hell.
If it's not an AI
At a
assistant, what
glance.
is
Yeah.
what is it?
It's-
It's just
I
it's
think-
beefed up at a glance.
Yeah, I think that's basically what it's going to be. Like, it's
Yeah.
going to use probably a newer version of Gemini Nano on device to process and
Right.
collect all this data and present it to you inside an application. Like, but it's not going to be like replacing Gemini in terms of the assistant. You'll
Yeah, I
probably be
guess
able to
it's-
access data through Pixel Sense through the Gemini, but it's not like replacing Gemini on the device.
Yeah, I guess assistant, as in it's just yet another something that's providing convenience and shortcuts and ways of you to do things faster, but maybe not the same I'm going to say that, and it's going to have some kind of conversational UI that we're going to know about in like 6 months. So,
Yeah,
yes,
right.
it's confusing. So, but I
I'm
also
glad we're all as confused as I am, because I was like, am I the only one who just doesn't get this at this point?
well, it will run fully on device, so it'll
there's
keep all your
that.
data private.
Yeah.
So there you go.
So, yeah.
There's that.
Nano at work.
Mm-hmm.
This is where Google, the Gemini company, and Google, the Pixel company, can't be seen to be like, oh, it's a Gemini Now feature, but Gemini Now is exclusive to Google phones because antitrust and everything we've talked about will come to the fore. So now they're like, let's build the most complex Russian doll system we can possibly think of to kind of make people forget that we're one company.
It's the Google's, as long as we've been doing, Jason, for almost 15 years now, the problem with Google has been sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and that has evolved into sometimes the left hand and the right hand are so aware of what they're doing, they overcomplicate it and make it a mess.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Yeah.
that's where this is. So
For sure.
Yep. Oh man. All right. Well, we'll see. All right, real quickly, we're gonna get through. We got a couple more stuff. One kind of update. Last week we saw a glimpse of the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 7, and turns out those renders that we saw were incorrect. Android Headlines and EvLeaks posted some renders of the Galaxy Z Flip 7 that did not have the correct front screen. And here our video viewers can see the updated image. If you go, audio listeners, basically the top third of it in the renders we talked about last week was shown not a screen. It is actually now a full front screen with the with the 3 holes for the camera units. But yeah, that's a pretty big miss. They updated it last Wednesday, so the leak has been updated. I love that we've got a leak and then an update to the leak, but here we are. So.
Chasing Roser like everybody else.
Yep.
Full screen.
Do you guys think
it, though.
it will still be convoluted to make things run fully on the front screen, or are they finally going to admit defeat with good luck and the 1,700 other modules and follow Motorola down the
Nope.
this is a small phone, use it as a small phone model?
Nope.
I hope so, but I doubt
I
it.
hope so.
Yep.
They like their software. They like their proprietary.
That's my gut. They're gonna control
SHH.
the experience at Samsung and One UI, right? They're gonna do it.
Apple
So-
playbook.
None of this is new to them because I've said as much. I'm like, it is objectively, there are people who will prefer the flatter sides and of last year's Flip 6 over the Razr.
Yep.
But that software is there is such a delta in like, hey, play games, have fun, do things versus this is a big smartwatch.
So limiting. Yeah.
I mean, that discrepancy between the Z Flip 6 and the Motorola Razr is the entire reason why Mr. Mobile, Michael Fisher, said they wouldn't support the Flip for their Clicks Android keyboard.
Yep.
Because it makes no sense. I use my Razr wherever I'm not reviewing or whenever I go out, my Razr is always with me. It's always charged up. Ironically, it's downstairs right now in my bag, but anyway, it's because I haven't left my house. I think they're onto such a winner, like Razr. Like, it's fun, it's usable, it works. The Samsung, you just go, oh, I still have to open my screen every 5 minutes.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good point.
Yep.
Indeed. All right. Rattling through. I don't need to really spend any time on this, just to say, hey, if you missed my OnePlus Watch 3 review, there is now a written version on Android Faithful, or you can go to my YouTube channel and just search for @Jason Howell and find my video version, which is, I'd say, a little bit more fun and enjoyable, but I'm still rocking the OnePlus Watch 3.
So,
Sorry,
yeah, so
I'm not
Jason-
laughing, I'm coughing.
you're not selling it as well. Jason took the OnePlus 3 snowboarding, like we talked about on the show, and his video review shows it outside in the wild, in the cold, and like that is an interesting angle for a watch. Kind of it's got to be able to exist in all environments, and I thought you did a great job of that. And go to AndroidFaithful.com and you can read the written review. But OnePlus Watch 3, couple weeks out, you guys are still thumbs up on it though, right, Jason? Or?
Yep.
Absolutely. Like in my written review, I wanted to give it a 4.5 stars, but the thing would only allow for full stars.
Yeah, I need to
like,
fix
what
that.
do I do?
I use the same newsletter platform. I'm like, yep.
Like, what do I do? I ended up just going for 5 because
good.
I mean, which I don't give 5s very much, but like I freaking love this watch. Like, it's a fantastic watch. It does everything I need. They solved the problems the complaints that I had with the previous one. Like, I really don't have any complaints about it right now. So
yeah, and I took it to MWC. I didn't bring a charger with me. It lasted
too.
5.5 days with AOD enabled. It almost lasted me my entire trip, but it died right as I boarded my flight back to Houston.
Wow.
But that's good enough for me. I didn't even enable battery saver mode, and I could have.
Yeah.
I charged mine on the Saturday night. It lasted me all the way through till Thursday evening. So it was Saturday afternoon. So it was like, 5.5 days. And then it had about 15-20%. Stuck it on power saving mode. Another 2 days.
Yeah.
And the thing is,
really stretches.
unlike anyone else where power saving mode is 4 little icons on a screen, I was still able to use the full watch face, which is super impressive.
Totally. Yeah. It's an impressive device. They did a great job. That's that. Speaking of OnePlus, though.
Yeah, and the last bit of OnePlus news is, unfortunately, if you're a fan of the alert slider, pour one out because OnePlus is getting rid of it in future hardware. But for good reason. The alert slider, if you aren't aware, is a 3-stop slider on nearly every OnePlus Android device. So I have here the OnePlus 13R holding up, and it's right here. This little slider, you can slide it 3 stops.
It's a total signature.
It's a signature iconic feature of their devices.
Yeah.
And it lets you quickly switch between unmuted, vibrate only, and muted modes. But that's pretty much all you can do with it, right? Because it's a hardware switch. It can't do anything else. Like, it's not a customizable button. So OnePlus wants to make it more versatile in future devices, so they're replacing it with a customizable button. They didn't say what this button will do or how exactly it'll adapt to you, as they mentioned in their blog post, but they do mention that you will still be able to use it to adjust the sound profile. So personally, as someone who always leaves their phone on vibrate, I think this is a good change, but if you are a huge fan, everyday user of the alert slider, you may be disappointed.
Yeah, you'll miss it. You'll miss it. If you use the alert slider, you'll be upset.
Been using this for a month. I think it's probably stayed on vibrate, and there's times where I was like, "Oh, I forgot there was an alert slider there."
Right. Oops. Yeah, but it feels so nice to slide it, right? That's got like a nice tactile.
Definitely your fidget spinner.
Yeah, it's a nice.
You can just send it up and down and down. That's why they test it however many hundreds of times. It's not thousands of times. It's not because it's because because it needs to be used that often. It's because it's going to sit there and people are just going to be like, slide it up, slide it down, and just get you that vibrating feedback kind of thing.
A little bit of dopamine rush, right?
It's not just about the feel of the switch either. It's that when you put it into vibrate, like when you're moving the switch, you get that really satisfying kind of like boom.
Yeah,
the haptic kind of acknowledgement. So that's really.
But
satisfying.
there's so much more they could do with that.
Oh, for sure.
It's my best guess. It's going to turn into an action button.
Yep. Absolutely.
Inspired by.
Yeah, you'll be able to turn, to silence your phone. You'll just have to issue a voice command to do it.
Or you can also lock. I wouldn't be surprised. Also, I genuinely had this weird dream, but it's relevant to what Jason just said. I remember a dream where it was very recently where I was like, how do I turn my phone on? Oh, I can't. There's no buttons. What do I do? Oh my God, my voice control isn't working. And it was like someone has locked me out of my phone for social reasons or whatever reason, or I've got banned by Google. And I was like, this would be a very weird life to live if you had no buttons. So anyway.
Could happen. And might happen after this break. That one came out of nowhere, didn't it? There we go. Okay, we got a few more things to talk about, and then we will let you all go because wow, this has been a really long episode, but a fun episode as they usually are. If you thought Android Auto was safe from the Gemininomicon, as I like to call it, think again. Android Authority tore down the Android Auto APK to test out the Gemini-ification of Android Auto, set it as the default assistant, which apparently you could do before, but you couldn't actually converse with and when they've tested this out in the past, and this time it actually worked. So I think the results, because this is still just like testing, like I think all it really does is prove what we probably already knew, which is that Google is working on bringing Gemini to Android Auto in some capacity. But it doesn't really, it doesn't really demonstrate probably the, I don't know, the stability of it. They were having issues with it actually showing locations on a map when they did a voice query. It didn't perform well there. Conversational queries, it performed better. So I don't know. What are you driving down the street having a conversation with your Android Auto AI? I suppose that's possible.
Do you know what? It is super useful. I have numerous times been out doing errands and I'm like, all right, I need to pick up food or I want to go there. What time does that close? And I'm driving. You do that search with Assistant, it will not work. If you can answer those queries with Gemini, and say to Gemini, hey, play this on Spotify, and also in one of the other cards, bring up lyrics so we can play carpool karaoke, those things. I actually think this might be one of the better uses for Gemini, if they can pull it off, because it's the kind of place where you need much more conversational, no rigid prompts. Anyone in the car needs to be able to interact with it, and it needs to come back to you in a way that you don't need to think about what it's saying. You're just listening and processing.
I just had a really, you triggered a really great idea. I bet you, well, I don't know if they would do this. Like a virtual passenger. So like you're driving by yourself and you're like, you know what? I need to stay awake. I need to have a conversation. You fire up a conversation and you talk about something with the Gemini.
That's pretty cool.
It's kind of do that with the Gemini Live capability, which is also something that they showed off.
Absolutely. Yes. Great segue. Gemini Live also in the works on Android Auto, has kind of the familiar Gemini Live interface. Doesn't go into real detail what they were able to fire off as far as what that actually means, right? But when you think like they're able to get the UI elements and kind of get into a conversation, but it was a little complicated for them to do that. But what that kind of got me wondering is, okay, so then if Gemini Live, if we think about what we know about Gemini Live is that it's this like multimodal conversational AI, assistant or whatever you want to call it. What does that mean in the car? And you think of all the other data points and all the other things like dash cam and, elements that are shown on the screen on the in-dash panel and stuff. And like, are we getting to a point to where Gemini Live can integrate all of those components and make that, part of the experience? Like, what am I seeing over there? And it taps into the dash cam. This is totally speculation, but like maybe that's possible. Maybe that happens at some point. Oh, interesting. Our cars are getting so weird and smart. And Win, what do you got to round us up?
I got another instance of a big company listening to user feedback. So if you are a person like me and my husband that uses partner sharing in Google Photos, you might have been a little upset in November 2024 when the partner sharing feature changed to exclude images from third-party applications. Well, people didn't like that. We kind of like our more options rather than less options. So it has come back to Google Photos. So if you are using partner sharing with someone, not necessarily your life partner, but just anybody, you will now see again an option for partner sharing. You will, I actually had screenshots of it, but yeah, it's there. There is a toggle called, so if you go into your partner sharing, go into the settings for each partner share that you are kind of participating in, and you will now see include content from other Android apps. I'm so sorry. So yeah, and then you can turn that on. You do have to go turn it back on explicitly. I know it was taken away from you, but now you got to go turn it on by yourself. But that's it. Now you can now you can include content in partner sharing that is from third-party apps. So there you go. That's it. Just a
Yay.
big win-win. You do have to turn it on, so mostly big win. But there you go. Putting stuff back.
It's good to
I like
be
when they
back.
listen. It's nice when they listen.
It is nice.
Yeah.
It's nice to be listened to. Well, we are at the end of this mega episode, this mega MWC roundup, and all the other news. That's the thing. Like sometimes a Mobile World Congress roundup would be the episode, but we happen to have that surrounded by a ton of other news that we wanted to talk about. So.
I know it's too much going on post mobile.
Just
It was
too much
really
going on.
quiet. Those last 2 weeks in February were dead. Remember, Jason? We did a show in like barely an hour, right? Yeah. So,
we were lulled into too much comfort.
Yep.
Nirav, great getting you on. What time is it where you're at right now? We need to feel guilty.
Oh, it's 2 a.m., but I have loved this.
Oh, that's great.
Well, that's awesome.
Mostly, thank you
tired
all.
at this point?
And I apologize because everyone who's ever been on a podcast with me knows that my favorite word is tangent.
Oh, no, you're fine. We all share the tangent thing.
Your tangents were all topical.
They
Yes,
were.
So no hard
Absolutely.
feelings.
Thank you.
None
Honestly, that's
whatsoever.
actually a surprise based on my track record with everyone else. I can derail most conversations, but you guys have just nailed thing. Yes, and cousin of Jar, do you know what the worst thing is? When I booked this with Jason, I thought this was starting at 1 a.m., but it actually started at 12 because half the clocks change in
Right.
Europe.
Oh, yes, I guess
So
so.
for you guys, it has so far discombobulated my brain.
Okay. All right. Are you going to bed right after this? Like,
No, I'll be up for
No.
another 90 minutes at least.
So you're a night owl. All right. So I don't feel quite as bad.
We're
If I
reaching
was
the
in your
end of my
shoes, I'd be
golden
like-
hours of actually like.
Are you gonna
9
be-
p.m. is to 2 a.m. is when I do a day's worth of writing normally.
Yeah, that's what I heard a lot of people say at Mobile World Congress, actually.
Are you going to be
Well-
popping open a new bottle, pouring one out for the other side, and then drinking the rest of it?
No, I think the bottle can wait till tomorrow. I try not to drink at home, but tomorrow I'm going out, so I'm like, well, naturally, that's like 3 bottles of prosecco there.
There you go. There you go. Save it for then. In the meantime, because you got some work to do, we're going to let you go. But before we do, what do you want to plug for people? Like, where should people go to find everything that Nirav is up to?
Best thing you can do, follow me on social. I'm at Nirav, Nirave on Twitter, at NiravG pretty much everywhere else, and follow at hot.tech. That's HOTDOTTECH, fully spelled out, on cross social, because that's where I'm sharing everything I'm writing, the videos, and I've got some fun and unique things coming up over the next couple of months that are going to be interesting.
Fun and unique. Two very good things. Excellent. Well, this was a real pleasure, and we'll have you back again, Nirav. And I will probably run into you at another event because that seems to be what happens.
Definitely. Thank you guys so much for having me. It's been an absolute blast.
Thank you. It has been fun. We appreciate having you here. Let's see here. Mishaal, what do you want to plug real quick?
Well, I actually wanted to announce, I mean, I don't know if any of you noticed, but I actually recently started a new position at Android Authority. I am now editor-at-large there. So I'll be doing a lot more for them in terms of like video content. I have been doing some videos already, but basically just more Android content solely on Android Authority and also the podcast here. But yeah, if you want to follow the work that I do, you can go to my Linktree page at Linktree/Mishaal Rahman, MISHAAL RAHMAN, where you can find a link to my article archive, my social media platforms like X, Mastodon, Threads, Discord, Reddit, Twitter, etc. And that's where I post about all of things related to Android, including what I saw at Mobile World Congress, what I see in Android 16 and beyond, and all those things related to mobile tech. So yeah, a lot of things coming in Android. Look forward to this week especially, because I am going to be dumping a lot of news that's very exciting for Android fans.
Okay.
No spoilers, but look forward to it.
No spoilers, but get excited. Excellent. What about you, Win? Also, congratulations, Mishaal.
Hey.
That's awesome.
Oh, yes, congratulations. Oh, about me. My bad.
Yes, you.
Randomlytyping.com. I'm an Android developer, have been for 13 years now. And you can I talk about Android stuff a lot, so you can find all that at randomlytyping.com. Find me at queencodemonkey.dev on Blue Sky and at queencodemonkey with this ridiculous long screen name on Instagram. And Nirave, it was really nice to meet you. Please come back sometime. It was lovely having you on. And
Thank you, Win.
Thank you for having me.
And Ron, what about you, sir?
We got to wrap this up. Just go follow me on social at RonXO, and I'll talk more next week. So
yeah, I'm right there with you. Just go to YouTube, search for Jason Howell, you'll find me, or anywhere else, just search for me, and you'll probably find me there. But that is it for this episode of Android Faithful. What an episode it has been. We appreciate you being here and supporting us. Patreon.com/Android Faithful, of course, is the way that you can really, really support us to do the show each and every week. We can't do this without your help. So thank you for that. Find us all over the map just by searching for Android Faithful, or go to androidfaithful.com, where we are writing, where we are publishing our podcasts and doing all sorts of podcasty things. It's what we do there. So anyways, thank you all so much for watching and listening. We'll see you next time on Android Faithful. Bye, everybody. I forgot the music. Oh, well.
I was wondering,
It's
it was
too
awfully
late to
quiet
play
there
it
for
at
a
this
second.
point. Yeah, it's too late.
I was gonna say now is the time on Sprockets when we dance.
Yeah,
It's
you can,
never
you
too
can
late.
dance to the...
There we go.
Well, there we go.
There we go. There we
Never
go.
too late.
Okay, well, while it plays, let me see here. We have af.showbot.tv. I'm not going to read all the titles because we are pushing. Well, we're past 7 of these.
There you go.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, when your graphics are on point is what I'm
That is
going to
awesome.
say.
Oh, that's all the FaceTime reactions. I've got them down.
Embedded in OS 10 or whatever.
I leave them on. I've actually had them go off during therapy, which
This is a smart. I like this
awesome.
idea.
Duty Free Hamon Mobile World Congress Roundup. So there's a straightforward and a not so straightforward. Google glitches getting stitches.
Oh, I like that.
It's got a ring to it. Conference driven development. Know when to hold it, know when to fold it. feel like maybe we've done that one before, but
probably.
that's all right. MWC phones, because we can. Because we can. There's
that would be the one that is most true to form.
Yeah. Any takers? Anything jumping?
I mean,
out
I'm
at
now
you?
tempted to throw a couple in myself.
Yeah.
I love duty free hamon, that's for sure. But no, I did hamon last week for the show.
Yeah.
I mean, Mobile World Congress Roundup, it seems, is what that's the main thing, right?
Or bringing Dexy back because smart.
Bringing Dexy back. Oh, there we go. Yeah, let's do Mobile World
Yeah.
Congress.
Well, is there any way we could spice it up?
I don't know how you want to
Congress
spice it up.
Roundup?
Mobile World Congress. F it, why not?
Mobile World Congress quote, yeah, or a colon.
Because we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
do
that.
Oh, I like that.
Perfect.
Mobile World Congress colon because we can. All right, we're there. Let me make sure we need to end the stream for the recordings to end, and we are already very late. So everybody watching and listening, thank you so much for watching and listening to doing those things and being with us. And we'll see y'all next time. It's fun times hanging out.
Next time.
See ya.
Right.
Good night, everybody.